Welcome back to Car Mechanics Simulator 2021. If you're enjoying this series or any other series on the channel, don't forget to drop a subscribe and a like on each video does really help. Today we're going to work on this beauty of a car. It's a 2003 Ribbsan Z530. It's got a V6 engine, it's a fairly big engine and a lot of problems. As you can see, most of them need to be discovered. This is going to cause us a few issues, as you'll see as we go through the video. First, we start as always with the sped up examination, and we'll also do some of the checks on the car at the same time. A few things are showing up early. There's a few reds on there, so that's a bonus. We are finding things very quickly. That should help us as we just come towards the end. Now we'll look at a couple of the tests, and you can see a few things showing up again. We'll look at them a bit more closely in a minute, and we'll finish off with the fuel pressure test, which we can't do because the engine can't be started. We can't do the fuel pressure test, which does delay us a little bit, but we should be able to get around it. Now you can already see there's some issues. I think that's a throttle on the side of the engine. There's no good. We'll start as always, take out the fluids, save ourselves a fine. Apart from I was trying to put fluids in instead of taking them out that time. Silly mistake, nothing major though. Couple of seconds lost, nothing more. Easy mistake to make. So this car, I don't think we've worked on one before. I'm kind of losing track of what cars we've actually worked on, which ones we haven't. I think it is a new one for us. V6, I think this even may be our first V6 engine that we've actually had to do stuff with the engine itself. We've done a V12, but this could be the first V6. I'm not 100% sure. But all the liquids are out, I believe, and we've already spotted an issue. So the ABS module has gone. So we found one of the first parts that needed changing. One down, many more to go. So we'll quickly get this changed while we're here. The ABS pump looks fine, it's just the module needs replacing. And although I always put this on the shopping list, if you go into the electronics shop, it's the first thing on the menu. But I still put it in manually in the shopping list. I don't know why I do it, but I can't help myself. I think it's habit. Right, so we can get the first part on, ABS module. That's probably the easiest part of this whole fix. This is going to get a little bit more complicated as we go on. So we'll start, I think, by draining the oil. Can't forget that. I know there's a trophy for spilling oil on the floor, and I'm refusing to do it knowingly at this point. At some point we'll have to, but I'm waiting until I really need the trophy, say for the platinum or something. If I do it accidentally, different story, but knowingly I just can't bring myself to do it at this point. So oil's all gone. Now we're going to need to take the engine out. I can almost guarantee the engine has to come out. Gearbox is also looking very ropey, so we'll take off the drive shaft and then we can take off the gearbox. Whether we can fix the gearbox or not, I don't know. The gearboxes are very expensive, and especially that size gearbox. It's not going to be cheap. Right, it's stuck. Why? Oh, our usual problem, starter motor. Got to take it off before we can take the gearbox off. Managed to spot it. Camera angles can be a little bit dodgy at times, but we make the best of what we can. And if we're going to take the engine out, we need the gearbox off anyway. And you can already see there's some issues inside the gearbox with the clutch pressure plate and the bearing. So they all need replacing. Whether we can fix them, again, I'm not 100% sure. We're still learning what we can and can't fix. That will hopefully change over time. At the minute, I'm never sure. Okay, what else do we need to do to take this engine off? I'm thinking exhaust. Let's first have a look at the front of the car. We can have a look at the wheels over here. There's a few brake issues. Again, straight through the tyre you can see brake caliper, brake disc. Both not in fantastic condition. Both will need changing. You may be able to fix the brake disc. Brake caliper, not so sure. Brake pads are okay actually, not too bad. Brake disc is gone. Anything else we can spot right away? Not that I can see. Everything else looks pretty silver and shiny. It's always a good sign. It's when it's brown you need to worry. So, front left is checked. Let's check the front right next. I'm trying to have a look from inside. It's kind of the wrong angle to look at it, to be honest. I'm just trying to see if there's anything you can already spot. Anything there? I'd probably be quicker to take the wheel off, to be honest. Let's go back to the engine. Let's concentrate on getting this engine out, I think. So to take this out, we're going to take off the exhaust manifolds. We could have taken off the lower exhaust part, but at the time, it was just as easy to do this. We're taking the car lower anyway to get the engine crane over and stuff, so it made sense. We'll just take off the engine manifolds, get the right angle on it, and loosen some screws, bolts. I always call them screws. I know they're bolts. Okay, that should come out. Moment of truth. Engine crane across. This is either going to work or we've made a mistake and it's not. Don't want to install the engine. I always do that first. For some reason, I always press installed engine before I do a pull out. I don't understand why. Force a habit. It's a bad habit I've got into already. And we can have a look at this beauty of an engine on the engine stand. There we go. That is one nice engine. Very, very interesting engine with lots of parts. So we can see one of the throttles needs replacing. It's the right hand side. The left one is okay. We need to take it off to get inside anyway. You can already see something poking out underneath the cover. That is rusted and gone, so we need to replace that. So we'll just take the other throttle off so we can take the top cover off. Have a closer look inside. Now a lot of these parts in the engine haven't shown up on their initial diagnostics. So we're going to have to, inspect, have a look, see what we need to change. And then we'll go from there. Okay, what have we got? So we've got the fuel rails. That one's definitely gone. The other one I think is okay. Yeah, should be okay. Now, is there anything... Let's have a look at the ignition coils. Not sure. What we're going to do, we're going to run back to the car. Kind of. We'll walk quickly. And we're going to check what the minimum percentage is. So it is 67%. The reason I was a little bit unsure is because obviously they're yellow. We haven't got all the parts known that need changing. It's always better just to double check the minimum amount. Generally, if something's under that minimum amount, that's going to be on your list. And the more you have that are unfound parts, the more we kind of have to wing it. But at the same time, we also don't want to be replacing parts that don't need replacing. That's going to cost us money and us profit. So we have found one ignition coil that is no good. That's lower than the percentage. Now, I think we're going to need to get behind here. The serpentine belt's gone. So we can take the belt tensioner off. That definitely needs replacing. That's red. I'm guessing we need to get behind the timing cover. And if so, we're going to have to take a lot of things off to get to it. We're just checking all the pulleys. Oil filter's gone, so we'll take that off over here. Yeah, I think we're going to need to get further into this to have a better look. There's a shoe in there. That's gone. So we are going to need to take off this whole front cover, which means all the pulleys have to come off. It's going to take a couple of seconds to get through it all. I mean minutes more than seconds. It does take quite a while to get everything off. Wait till I have to put it all back together. That's always the interesting one. Trying to remember where goes where. I will say, Car Mechanic Simulator 2021, for people that aren't massively au fait with cars like myself, it is a fantastic way of learning. It does hold your hand a fair amount. This is on normal mode. I know there's a hard mode where you don't see, I think it's the highlights of the parts don't show up properly. But I'm liking the fact it holds my hand to a point, because I will miss things. I will forget. I wouldn't know how to do certain things. So I like the fact it's open to beginners as well as people that know what they're doing. I think it's a really good idea. This cover has a lot of bolts. I really wish we'd got the sped up bolt unscrew part skill thing. Right, we're inside though. There we go. There's the shoe that needs to come off. Timing shoe. Looking at it, there doesn't see anything else. So a little scan. We don't know about the chain. So some of these aren't. None of them. We haven't inspected these things because you can't. So if we want to inspect the belts and the chains, we're going to have to take other bits off to get to them. So we can have a look at that timing chain. That might actually need replacing. That one definitely does. So there we go. We found a few issues just by taking things out. Water pump, again, we don't know what percentage it is. So if we take it out, it will give us a percentage, which is quite handy. I think the water pump's okay. Another timing chain. Yeah, that looks probably like it needs replacing as well. The power steering pump. That's all good. Don't need to do anything with that, so we can put that straight back on. So this is something that doesn't need replacing. The water pump, I think, was okay. Yes, it is. It's above the minimum, so that can go back on as well. Is there anything else on this front part we can see? The pulleys, we actually have percentages on them. On the cam gears, we have percentages on. So I think that is everything on the top. That's everything we can see currently. We'll take the fuel rail off. No, the fuel rail's okay. So we've now fixed everything. We're just going to stick the brake disc on the lathe to get fixed. We have brought all the parts needed. We've fixed any parts we could fix. And we're going to speed up putting this back together, because it does take a few minutes. It is going to take a little while to get all the things back on, especially with all the bolts on that cover there. I've not sped it up fully. I sped up a decent amount. But it was definitely interesting taking this apart and learning all the different parts. We haven't really done lots with the timing shoes before, so there's a new lesson to learn there. But everything was brought. That is all done. We can now get this beautiful engine back together. Fuel rails back on. Top cover on as well. Throttle's back on. Nice new throttle on the right hand side. And we can put the exhaust manifolds back on before we put it back in. Saves us a bit of time in there. And that is the beautiful engine put back together. I think we did well. Didn't take too long with all the different parts and things, but I think we did a good job. The only thing we haven't done is the gear part, where the gearbox goes. We can do that under the car, so that's not a big deal. So we'll take the engine off, and we can now put it back in the car. Engine crane can go away, and that is the engine back in. Always nice. It's always satisfying putting the engine back in. So there's still things missing. Air filter base is a part not discovered. We've also got another part not discovered there. ECU as well. Brake system, gearbox, we know we need to sort that out. And gears keep slipping. That's another issue we need to deal with. But first, we'll start with the ECU, since it's right in front of us. I don't think we can fix it. It's red. It's unlikely to be able to be fixed. So we'll stick it on our shopping list. We'll have to go and buy a new ECU. I believe it's in the electronics. It is indeed. Decent amount of money they are. Don't want to keep replacing them too often. Although we should make it back in profit, hopefully, come the end. This is just a customer car as well. It's nothing more than that. So we've got the fuse box. What do we need to do in the fuse box? Is anything here? No power. There's a part not discovered. It might be worth checking if there's a fuse gone. Engine no power sometimes can be a fuse issue. So let's have a look inside. Most of these parts, because we did the test, which will show up. I can't remember what the test said. Although, to be fair, we did the multimeter test. So with the multimeter test, if there was any issues with any of the fuses, it should have told us. So we're checking it ourselves manually, but actually we don't need to, because the multimeter would have shown it up. We know there's something wrong in the engine bay, but I'm not entirely sure what it is. So let's have a little scan around. Anything else we can see that's obvious that could be the issue? Nothing really coming to mind at the minute. Obviously, the radiator could be the issue. The radiator, we'd have to take everything off, and I think we'd notice it. I think it'd be brown, busted, and noticeable. We do know we need to replace the air filter base. That's on the list. That's a part we found via examination. So off with the beautiful little clips that get in our way every time. 4 in total. Luckily, they're all good percentage. We don't need to replace any of them. I suppose the one thing they could add to this is when you take the little clips off of that, they could accidentally break. That'd be a bit more annoying, wouldn't it? There we go. Air filter base. Again, it's red. I don't think we can fix it, so I think we'll have to buy a new one as a replacement part. I think that's in. Is it in electronics still? Is it in car parts? I can't think. Air filter, car parts. I'm thinking of the fuse box. Easily confused. They both look similar-ish. So air filter base on. The filter itself was fine, so that can go back in. And the top can go back on, and we've got 4 lovely clips to put back on as well. Although I didn't put them back on. Let's try that again, shall we? I clicked out too quickly. Let's put these clips back on. That'll be the last thing I want, is to find out I'd missed a clip somewhere. Nothing worse. Now, we knew that part needed replacing, so I don't think that's the bit that's missing from the engine, the engine bay making an odd noise. So there is still something in here we haven't done, but we might as well do the rest of the car while we're here, and then we can have a proper look around. So, from right, we could have done this earlier, we didn't. We should have done. Brake disc is no good, you can see that through the tyre there. I do like the rims that are quite open, because that way you can see better through them, in terms of what needs looking at and what doesn't. Okay, brake discs, they seem to be okay. Not brake discs, brake pads. Brake disc wasn't okay, that needed to come off. It needs to be sorted out. I don't know if it's too low for us to fix, we'll have to check that out. But I believe it's everything here, other than rubber bushings. We haven't looked at rubber bushings. I don't know if they'd cause the issue. Since they're a nemesis, it's always good to check them every chance we get. And that one's okay. Be the worst thing to leave behind. I don't want a nemesis striking again. We've had it far too many times so far. I'd rather check these whenever we get a chance. Now I know there are things you can do to check these for you. You can actually get the test path extension from the garage, and it will test them for you. But we would have had an issue. We could have, if we had it, we could have used it, but because the engine wouldn't start, we wouldn't be able to. So the brake disc can't be fixed. We'll have to buy a new one. And that's the thing we find with some of the tests. It's all well and good doing them. If the engine doesn't start, you can't do all your tests. So you kind of have to get the engine up to a running condition, then do your other test to find these little bits. But we always try and manually look first, just to save a bit of time. You can sometimes find everything just by manually looking around. And there's nothing better than just having a proper look around an engine bay. And I think there's more of a satisfaction than a device telling you what's wrong. You manually find it yourself. I've said manually quite a few times in the last couple of sentences. Anyway, wheel back on. All the brake system is back on the front right. So that is done. Now, if we head to the front left, we already knew there was an issue with the brake disc here. This one I believe we fixed on the lathe. So that's good. We're just going to check the rubber bushings first. The reason we do this before we put the wheel back on is simply better view. If we do it after the wheel's back on, your view's a bit more stopped. That's the wrong word. A bit more obscure. That's the word I was after. So it's always better to do this when you have a decent view of them. I find it easier. But all the rubber bushings seems to be okay. We did examine these. I think they'll be okay. They would have come up in examination, I would have thought, if there was an issue with the ones inside the suspension there. I'm assuming they would have done. Anyway, brake disc back on the front left, followed by the brake pads, then brake caliper. This one was the one we needed to fix or replace. Although I think the replacement went on the other side. It doesn't matter. As long as it's above the percentage, it still works. Tyre back on, and the front of the car should be done. Now, what else is left? We've still got gearbox to do. I think that might be the thing to do next. We'll put the gear system all back in, the flywheel, clutch pressure plate, or the clutch plate, sorry. Then the clutch pressure plate. I was getting ahead of myself. And then clutch release bearing next after we've done this one up. And then gearbox itself can go back on. There we go. We had to buy a new gearbox. We couldn't fix the one that was there. So that's a big expense. Well, now, we need to get an angle on the starter motor. Yes, I've remembered it's there. Yes, I know I need to put it back on. I normally forget, but I remembered it's there. Just need an angle. There we go. Starter motor on. We've done all the rubber bushings around here. I'm just thinking of anything else. Anything else noticeable? I think we're okay. So let's put on the drive shaft. Angle's getting a bit obscured by wheels at this point, but drive shaft back on. We do need to look at the brakes at the back to see if there's any other issues around the back end. I'm not entirely sure if we've checked if we've done all the brake stuff. So we'll just have a manual look now. Anything obvious that we can see. Not looking at it. Cross member's okay. Suspension seems okay. Obviously brake caliper we're not sure, but it looks fine. Oh, I have spotted something. Can you see it? Not the rubber bushing we're checking manually now. On top of the fuel tank you have the fuel pump. And from here, I think that's gone. And obviously we couldn't do the fuel pressure test because the car wouldn't start. Whereas now, we can. Well, we can't quite yet, we haven't put the liquids back in. But we can manually see this. This saves us doing that test again. So we need a new fuel pump. So we'll buy this and then put that back in place. That's another issue solved. There we go. Rubber bushings on the back. We're just going to check these out just to be sure. Again, we don't know the percentage, so we'll take this one out. All good. Put back in. I'd rather they all be all good and we wasted a couple of minutes checking them than we get to the end and then think, oh, I wish I checked them all. Okay. Brake disc looks fine. Brake caliper looks okay. Trying to get a view on the brake pads. I can't quite see the brake pads. So I don't know if they're okay or not. I think they're okay. Again, if you had the test path, you could put this through the test path. It would tell you your brake conditions. It is a handy tool to have. Obviously we don't have it yet. So unfortunately we can't use that as a diagnostics. So what is left? The one part not discovered is a strange noise from the engine bay. Now I have a confession. I spent an awful long time looking for this part. I looked everywhere. So I decided put all the fluids back in and we'll do we can do a test. Because we couldn't do this originally, because the engine wouldn't start, we've now got the engine to a condition it can start. So I thought we'd finish off our tests and see if we can find it. And lo and behold, we did. So after about half an hour, 45 minutes of trying to find the one issue, we found it. It was the camshaft. So this is the speeded up show of us taking the engine back apart to get to the camshaft. Now, I could have found this whilst we had the engine first out, but I wouldn't have known or wouldn't have thought of checking the camshafts. I probably should have done, admittedly. But we took all the timing off, we found all the issues on the front, we've done the ignition coil. There was no indication that the camshaft needed doing. Mistake on my part. If the engine could have started and we could have done that initial test, we would have known. But with not knowing and not checking a couple of more areas on the engine while it was out, it's cost us about 45 minutes in trying to search for it and get extremely annoyed. It also meant because we had to start the car, we put oil back in the car. We had to drain it back out again to take the engine out. So we've lost a bit of money on oil. Maybe it's one of these things I need to be a bit more visually checking things more often, maybe. And of all the things, we failed on our attempt to fix the part. So we now have to buy a new one, just to add to our misery at this point. Right, we're going to speed up putting the engine back together. It's a long, tedious process. Obviously, this is now the second time we're putting it all back together. And we've got to get it back in the car. Yeah, it's one of those easy mistakes to make that you kind of feel stupid for making at the time, but we've all done it. I do know from now on to check engines when they're out of the car. It's better to check them as thoroughly as possible, especially if it doesn't start, because you do know then some of your tests are missing. So I've learned a lesson. You'll probably see in future videos I still don't learn from my mistakes, but I'm trying. The engine is done, the engine is off, right, back into the car. It's now just a case of doing everything all over again. So for the second time, the engine can go back in. I was frustrated, admittedly, at this point. But it was one of those genuine mistakes where, how was I to know? So we can refill liquids for the second time. I had to take them all out, just in case I spilt any by taking the engine out again. So, again, a little bit more money spent than we probably should have done. But once more, it couldn't be helped. Mistakes cost money. I am learning that as we go through this. Here we go. More coolant back in. And then I think we just need oil. I don't know. I didn't take the brakes liquid out. I also find the brake fluid, you never need to take it out. Obviously, if you accidentally take the brake servo off, you're going to leak fluid and get fined. But there's no part of the engine that you need to take out that affects that I can see. So you never need to drain it, from what I found. Okay, are we done? No, because I forgot to put the gearbox back on. This car is getting worse. It was another genuine error. I forgot. Obviously, we put the engine back in. I thought, right, let's get it all back sorted. Let's get it done. Completely forgot I took the gearbox off, which is what's needed to get the engine out. I hadn't clicked. Here we go. Clutch pressure plate back on for the second time. Release bearing. Gearbox. Start a motor. Once we get to the area it's in, there we go. And then it's just drive shaft. There we go. And I think that's it. I want to say that's it done. I'm hoping it is. So we're going to sell everything off as we lower the car down. All the parts we didn't need. And we'll have a quick talk about how much we spent on the car. And then we'll see how much we got out of it. So we actually ended up spending £3,626 on the car. Some of that was excess fluids. A few times we had to take them out, replace them, take them out. So a little bit more money we wanted to. But all in all, it was a decent car to work on. Obviously, we made some mistakes. It should come up in a second, but the car is going to pay us £13,382, which gives us a total profit of £9,756. That's not bad for a day's work. And that's it for today. We will see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.